Okay, everyone, welcome to English for this morning, and we are continuing to look at David Walliams and Mr. Stink. So hopefully you have been enjoying the work so far and looking at the different characters. And on Friday, you started to look at speech punctuation, and that's what we're going to be carrying on with this week, because you're going to be looking at putting speech into your final outcome, your own story that you work on, and making sure that it's punctuated correctly. So today, what we're going to do is we are going to be coming up with a scenario where Mr. Stink and Chloe are, and we're going to be creating some text around it. So I want you to have a little think about chapter 5. So chapter 5 was the one you did your guided reading on Friday, and it is the part of the story where Mr. Stink and Chloe go into the cafe. So it's pouring with rain outside, they're getting really wet, so they decide to go into the cafe to get dry. So can you picture that scene in your head? It's quite an amusing scene because as Mr. Stink goes in there, obviously suddenly his smell takes over the whole of the cafe, and so everybody just leaves at once. And Chloe and Mr. Stink end up having the whole cafe to themselves to have a chat. And what makes it funny is that Mr. Stink doesn't even realise that that's the reason why. He's just sort of thinks that everybody just leaves because that's what they want to do. Everybody had somewhere to go at the same time. And Chloe is very, very aware that it's to do with his smell. Okay, so we know that Mr. Stink is not suited to a closed environment, that enclosed space, because of his smell, and that's part of what makes it funny. So you're going to be creating today your own scene where that happens, but we're just going to be doing notes and things today, because tomorrow you're going to be putting it into a small paragraph with speech in it. So we're just focusing on the notes today. So what I'd like us to start doing is thinking about places where Mr. Stink and Chloe could go that would be quite amusing, and where Mr. Stink doesn't really belong, where there would be quite a funny scene like the one in the cafe. So one where people are made to feel quite uncomfortable, or they don't really want to be there, or his smell overtakes the whole environment. So the first thing I'd like you to do is I would like you to list as many places as you can think of. So when we're at school, we always talk about coming up with as many ideas as possible, because we know that our first idea isn't always the best one. And as our brain gets going and our juices start flowing, we start coming up with some really, really fun ideas. So we always try and think of as many as we can, because we know the first idea isn't always the best. So the first thing I'd like to see is that I would like you to do a mind map or a brainstorm or a list or bullet points, whatever it is. I don't mind how you come up with the ideas, but I want you to take 5 minutes, so just 5 minutes, to list as many places as you can think of that Mr. Stink would not belong and would cause quite a problem for other people in that environment. So I will start you off, okay? So I always give you a few ideas. Sorry, let me just get a new blank screen for you. So for example, I'm going to turn my page sideways just because it's easier to use that way. So I am going to start off, and the reason I'm doing it this way is so that I can add to it when I want to. So my places, oh, my pen's not working. And start, and I'm going to use bullet points. So I might decide to go with a posh restaurant. Sorry, my writing's not very good today. A posh restaurant. I might decide to do somewhere very famous, like Harrods, for example. I might decide to do a tent, maybe a campsite, where he goes, and that's where they decide to be. So it can be absolutely anything at all. Doesn't have to stick to just shops or places. It could be anything at all, anything that takes your imagination. It could be that they travel to go somewhere. So do they want to go to the Shard, for example? So anywhere at all. I want you to take 5 minutes and list as many different places as you can think of that would be funny for Mr. Stink to go to and would cause a problem for everybody else around them. So take 5 minutes, off you go, see how many you can come up with. Okay, so if you're back with me, you've taken that 5 minutes and you've thought as many different places as you can think of that Mr. Stink could go that would be quite funny. Okay, and you've come up with a list or a brainstorm or whatever. Okay, so like I said to you, today we are literally just thinking of the ideas. Okay, we're not actually going to put it all together. So what I want you to think of now is that in those scenes, okay, who might be there? Okay, so which people might be there? So for example, in the cafe scene, you had Mr. Stink and Chloe, and then you had other members of the public. So you might use some of the stock characters that we have from the book: Mum, Dad, Annabelle, the Duchess, and then you might have some other characters as well. You might like to include the character that you created last week. So is it that they meet that new character? Okay, or it could be that you create new characters that come up. So for example, now on my same sheet that I did before, so I've got places, I can now come up with some people. So I'm definitely going to need Mr. Stink, and I'm definitely going to need Chloe. But who else might be there? So I might have members of the public, but if, say, for example, I was thinking about a posh restaurant, I might have a waiter there who's going to be serving them. If I was in Harrods, I might have someone like a cashier, or someone who's working there who's helping me. If I was at the Shard, I might have security guards. It might be that Chloe and her family have actually gone to this place and Mr. Stink then arrives. Okay, so is there going to be Annabelle? Is it going to be Mum? Or is she going to bump into, say, some of her friends from school? Okay, so is she going to bump into the person the school bully? Or is she going to bump into Raj, for example? Who else might be there? What other characters, what other people might be there? Okay, so I want you to take a few minutes and come up with as many ideas as you can. Again, so down one side you've got all the places, and down the other side you've got all the people. So 5 minutes again, and coming up with characters that you think might be there. 5 minutes, off you go. Okay, so if you're back with me now, you've come up with your list of places and you've come up with your list of peoples, which might include some of the characters that you came up with last week. So now what we're going to do is we are going to start putting that together into a scene. So what you're going to have to do before you do that is you need to choose what was your favourite scenario, what was your favourite place and your people that you were going to have there, because you need to have that in your mind for creating the scenario. Okay, so it's completely up to you what you choose, but you need to decide on the place and the people that are going to be there. So I'm going to show you what I have decided to do, and I'm going to model this for you so that you then understand what you have to do for your activity. So I am going to think about the things I'm going to be thinking about with my scenario is: where are they? Why is it an inappropriate place to be? What are they doing? Who are they? Who is there? And how do those others react? So I've got my place, I've got my people, and now I'm starting to think about putting my scene together. Now, remember, again, I'm just thinking in notes. I'm just thinking in short sentences. I'm not doing a lot of description. Okay, this isn't my final product. This isn't my most amazing vocabulary. This is just my ideas. So I've decided, where are they? Okay, what they're doing, who's there, how do people react? So I've looked at my ideas and I've picked out the one that I like. So for my one, I decided that Chloe and Mr. Stink go to a posh store, Harrods, and Mr. Stink decides that he wants to have lunch. Chloe's worried about lots of people being there. They need to use the lift to get to the place to have lunch. Now, the reason I decided that they've got to go in a lift is we already know that Mr. Stink is very smelly, and enclosed spaces are not a good place for him to be. And obviously a lift is a very, very small space. And so I'm thinking I'm in a really posh establishment. I'm in Harrods in London. Then he's got to get into the lift where there's going to be other people. So the lift arrives and there are lots of posh people in there, and they're not happy about him needing to use the lift. Okay, so what you're going to do now is you're going to take your idea of where they are and the characters, and you're going to create a mini scenario for me. Okay, so thinking about where are they, what are they doing, who's there, how do they react? Okay, so that's step one. Choose your scenario and then write down where are they, what are they doing, who's there, how do the other people react, and create yourself a little paragraph like I have. So we're going to do everything in stages today. We've come up with a list of places, come up with a list of people. Now you're going to create your scenario. So take maybe another 5, possibly 10 minutes if you need it, and create your scenario. Off you go. Okay, so if you're back with me again, you should have created your little setup. You should have it now written down in notes. I've literally just used short sentences. There's no description. I haven't described what the place is like. I haven't described, you know, the walls or the lift or the people or anything like that. It's just literally like lift arrives, lots of posh people in there. They're not happy about him needing to use the lift. Okay, so I've kept it really simple. So now my final thing to do, because we're looking at speech, is to create like a script of what the people say when the lift arrives. Okay, so or when they're in Harrods. So I've thought about my scenario, and now I'm thinking about what speech will happen. And I'm not worried about doing all the speech punctuation, because that's what we're going to work on tomorrow. Not worried about doing all the speech punctuation. I'm not worried about all the description, using all the synonyms for said. I'm literally just going to write down what they say. So Mr. Stink says, "Catch the lift, my dear." Chloe says, "Are you sure? It's a bit busy." We've got that whole nervousness about Chloe going on in there. She quite often hesitates, and she doesn't want to upset Mr. Stink, so she often has little pauses. Mr. Stink, "I'm sure this fine lady will make some room." So the lift has come. They're going to get into the lift. There's lots of other people in that lift. So there's lots of posh people in there. And he's saying, and we know Mr. Stink's always really polite. He's really kind. So he's saying, "I'm sure this fine lady will make some room." So Mr. Stink and Chloe squeeze into the lift. And then the posh lady coughing, "Oh dear, I feel a bit faint." Okay, so I've created my little script there for my scenario. So again, I've kept it really, really simple, because what we don't want with a story is for speech to overtake everything else. It's got to add to the story. It doesn't become the main part of it. So now I've got my scenario of what's happening. They're in Harrods, they're catching the lift to go to lunch. The lift arrives and the posh people are in there. They're not happy about it. And the conversation that goes on between Chloe and Mr. Stink, and what the lady says as well. Okay. That is all you need to get done today, because tomorrow we're going to be looking at turning that into a descriptive paragraph with properly punctuated speech in it. Okay, so don't lose what you've got today, because you will need it tomorrow, because we're going to be practicing, rehearsing, putting our own speech punctuation in. Okay, if you get stuck at all or you're not sure, please do drop me an email. I'm more than happy to help with anything. Okay, all of the resources and all of my examples are at the bottom of the page. Okay, so the PowerPoint slide there with the idea of Harrods and the script, in case you're not sure, is at the bottom. All right, and it does say on the web page what the activity is. Okay, so on the web page it does say your task is that you are going to think of as many, so you've got 3 different activities. Think of as many funny places that Mr. Stink and Chloe could visit. Then activity 2, choose one of the places from your list and identify which characters would be there. Activity 3, make notes about the main event, what could happen. And then once you've written that, write a dialogue like a script. And then you can use that tomorrow. So all of that is on the webpage for you. But if you have any problems at all, do let me know, and I'm more than happy to give you a hand. Okay, I hope you get on really, really well today, class 3, and I look forward to speaking to you later.